Hello, good day. Glad you all are joining me again this week as we continue to look at this chapter of Romans, Romans chapter 8 here, and we're going to look at verses 12 through 17. And here's where, for me at least, it starts to hit the heart a little bit more. The beginning few verses are more of a thought process, right? A connection with trying to process in who God is, who Jesus is, who the Spirit is, and how we think about it. And I feel like here Paul takes a turn and really takes a stab at the heart. And well, let's just get into it and we'll see what's going on here. So again, it's Romans 8, 12 through 17. And as always, though I don't think I say it as much at this point, but please read these verses for yourself and see what you see and try to listen for what the Holy Spirit is trying to tell you. But so Romans 8, 12 through 17. It says this: So then, brothers and sisters, we are under obligation, not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh, for if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are the sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery, leading again to fear, but you received the Spirit of adoption, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness to our spirit that we are God's children. And if children, then heirs, namely heirs of God and also fellow heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, so we may also be glorified with him. There is a lot going on here. But first of all, going back to just verse 12, we are free from the feelings and desires to give into the flesh. All right, so just because we feel a certain way or we crave a certain thing or we desire a certain thing doesn't mean that we are bound to give into that feeling. Again, feelings can lie to us, feelings can shift, they can change, they can manipulate us. We can lie to ourselves as well. And just because something is a felt want doesn't mean that it is an actual need for us. So we have to be very leery of our feelings, which I know goes completely contrary to the way that our culture is at this moment, where if you feel it, it must be good and therefore do it, which is really just a lie. So we are free from whatever our feelings are, because feelings can deceive. There is no obligation to seek after what the world has. We don't have to want the newest cars. We don't have to want the prestige, the acclaim, the job title. We are free from desiring those things. Now, that's not to say if you have those things that you're in sin, but that's just saying, like, we don't have to strive after those things. We have a greater calling, because really all the world offers in the end is death and separation from God. In the end, like, none of these things we gain in this world matter. I mean, when we die and we're buried, we can't take any of these things with us. I mean, we have tombs of the pharaohs and other kings of old that have just filled their grave sites with all of these things so they could take them to the afterlife, and they are still there. So nothing at all can be gained from the strivings of this world, and we're free from that obligation of wanting those things. Again, now there's a certain aspect of, yes, we have children to take care of, we have payments to make, but maybe you need to reevaluate, why am I making a payment on this one thing? But that's a deeper thought you need to have for yourself and kind of tangential to what we're talking about here. But the world also just offers separation from each other because we compete with one another, but also just separation from the presence of God. And since we have the Spirit, though, we have the power to flee the desires of the flesh. And that's what Paul's talking about here is death leads, the world leads to death, the Spirit leads to life. So we have this power in us if the Spirit isn't dwelling us. And again, we're seeking that more deeper upward call towards spiritual things that are going to last for all eternity. And Paul talks about that in Philippians, and Jesus really preaches on that in the Sermon on the Mount, which is in Matthew 5, 6, 7, 8, in that region. So go read those chapters for some of that. And here's where it kind of takes the turn. So if or since we have the Spirit of God, then we are now sons or children of God. And that's where it starts to hit me a little bit more. We are not bound by the fear that the world offers, but we are now bound to the Father by adoption. There was nothing in us. Like, God wasn't like, oh, I need that person on my team. And I kind of liken this, as silly of an illustration as it is, to picking sides during recess as I was a kid, where you have the two teams and you're picking the best people because they bring something to the table. And God's not doing that. He's not like, oh, I need this person on my team. He is not persuaded by anything we bring to the table. And he has such a deeper love and understanding of who we are that he longs for us all to be back into his family. See, because we've been separated by sin, through sin from him, and he is calling us back into his family through the redemption of our sin through Jesus. So our adoption was really just a sheer act of his unfathomable love for us. There is no way we can comprehend the love of God for us. We should be seeking it to understand that. And just, again, the fact that he brought us into his family for no other purpose other than his love for us. And we're adopted. Now, our family, we have adopted children. And their adoption brings a whole new layer of life to life. There's just this thing that's going on here, and you long to, you see these kids and you long to bring them into your family, to love them as your children. They're adopted, they are not naturally born to you, but you think in your head, I will love these children as my own, and I will give them all of the rights and privileges of my children. And then they continue to hurt you. Now, I mean, this is our experience, right? So some adoptions are smooth and there is a real deep connection that's going on there, but a lot of adoptions don't go that way. And here's where I kind of take it and I go, that's exactly though what I do to God as I'm adopted into his family. I seek after the things of my own desires, my flesh, the world, exactly everything we've been talking about that we should be fleeing from if we have the Spirit. But I go after my own things, and I basically reject the love and the blessings, the privileges of being God's son for my own sake, my own wants. And personally, I see that in our adoption story, where I want to give all of the same things, the same blessings to all of the children equally, but you have a child that rejects those things because there's some sort of disconnect there. There's some sort of misunderstanding of what real love is. And that's where it gets really hard. We resist the attachment to the Father, even though we have the Spirit indwelling us. And I can see that happening where it's, again, in our adoption story, there are others, again, that are different, but these children, they want that attachment, they want these things, but they resist it because they're scared, there's fear, they just don't like the way that it is, they don't like how it's set up. Again, I mean, the psychology of it all is deeper than all of this, but the bottom line is, I think it's that we think our ways are higher than the Father's ways. Just like in some adoption situations, those kids think their ways are better, even though they don't actually really know any better, and they seek after that desire to belong in their own way, even though it causes rift and separation. And I hope you're seeing the analogy there of, we seek after our own desires and it causes a rift and separation there. But as far as going back to the spiritual side of things, the Holy Spirit is the witness, though, of the indwelling of the Spirit in us to our connection with God the Father. And so we don't have to wonder about this connection. There is that connection by the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. And we have the rights, we have the privileges of a child. And we simply need to, I guess, live as if we actually are. We were on the outside, and now we are on the inside of that love, even though we may deny it or push it away. And then, of course, Paul puts this in there, that we are heirs, right? We're co-heirs with Christ, the Son, to God the Father, and all of these things are indeed ours. But there's this kind of clause in there, if indeed we suffer with him, because we're going to suffer with him. That's something we can't really escape. But since we are suffering with Christ as he suffered, we will then glorify with Christ. We will be glorified through Christ because he was glorified. And so we will share in that same glory. And it's kind of this idea of we are saved towards the glory of Jesus despite our own worldly desires and our flesh-seeking things. We are saved towards the glory of Jesus and saved towards his righteousness, and we are sealed with the promise of the Holy Spirit because he indwells us as children of the Father. And that's a big, giant thought right there. I'm going to say that again. We are saved towards the glory of Jesus, saved towards his righteousness, and sealed by the promise of the Holy Spirit indwelling us as children of the Father. And so I think right now, that's a good time to simply say, go and reflect on this. What are you living towards? What are you progressing towards in your life that is godly? What are you progressing towards that is fleshly? And you need to have an honest reflection with yourself at some point and really examine your heart, examine your mind, and decide, where am I really going? What is it that I'm really desiring? Do I want to seek after my own things, or do I want to seek after the things of God? So I encourage you to do so. Search, search, search. Don't give up. Continue to progress in holiness as we're sanctified with the indwelling of the Spirit. Progress towards the righteousness that Christ offers us because of the love of the Father for us. So that's a lot. That's a lot today, but I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and I just blessings on you all for where you are at in your current journey, and I pray that you will progress towards him all the more. So thanks again for listening. Take care. We'll catch you next time.